Today we're going to talk about our benchtop grinders and how we use them in our joinery shop to sharpen our chisels. The benchtop grinder here, we have it attached to a nice pedestal unit, so it's up at a nice operating height. It consists of two outside grinding wheels which are attached to spindles, which is then attached to the central motor. On the front of the machine we have an on and an off switch, and in front of each grinding wheel we have two adjustable tool rests. These can be adjusted with our wrench, which is on the side of the machine. If one's not available, make sure that you have a crescent wrench. And there's also safety shields. So these are adjustable safety shields, and we want to make sure that we have those in place. To make sure that this machine is locked out, before you do any adjustments on this machine, you want to ensure that it is unplugged. So we'll unplug that from the wall to make sure it's locked. Double check by turning this on and off. There is some entanglement issues on this machine, so make sure that you have your sleeves rolled up and any loose clothing or hair is tied back. For grinding, we are going to be using an aluminum oxide grinding wheel with a medium grit ranging from 30 to 60. Very important to note the maximum RPM on your grinding wheel before you install it. This one here is at 3,600 RPM. The max of the RPM on the motor is also 3,600, so this is safe to use. We want to do a quick visual inspection, making sure there's no cracks or no broken areas. You also want to perform a ring test when installing a new grinding wheel. If you suspend this wheel and then tap that with the back side of a chisel or a screwdriver, you should hear a nice clear ring. If you hear a thud, that usually means that there's a crack in that wheel, and then you want to discard that wheel and not use it. I now want to take a look at sharpening my chisel. What we're going to need here is we're going to need our chisel that we wish to grind. We're also going to need our protractor. It's also very handy to bring over your machinist square as well, just to ensure that you actually have that nice square edge. Our chisels, just for general purpose, are going to be ground at 25 degrees. We can check that with our protractor and just making sure what that angle of our chisel actually is. Once we've set the angle, we know what angle we like, we need to set the tool rest. So again, we can loosen these screws on the side and we can adjust that tool rest. I put this chisel up on the side, and what I'll be looking for is making sure that it's hitting both at the heel and the toe, if this in fact is at 25 degrees, and adjust accordingly. You want to make sure that the tool rest is as close to the wheel as possible without actually hitting that grinding wheel. After that, make sure that your safety shield is in place. You're going to have some safety glasses, and then also put in some hearing protection as well. So my grinder is now set up and I'm ready to grind my chisel. What I have noticed though is I have noticed some shiny spots on my grinding wheel. So this is where we're going to get into looking at our star dresser. So we're going to actually what's called dressing the grinding wheel. So that's actually removing abrasive particles from that wheel and giving new fresh abrasive particles. Over time, sometimes we can round these over or they can become dished. We have a star dresser which uses metal discs which will actually remove those particles. And we also have a stone. Okay, so these stones are usually made from some silicon carbide, which is actually harder than that aluminum oxide wheel. So to dress this wheel, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this on, and then I'm going to hold this on that tool rest. Some of them will be provided with hooks that you can hook over top of that tool rest, and then I will just move back and forth across that wheel, making sure I take off any of those shiny spots. I've now dressed the grinding wheel and I do not see any more shiny spots, so I have a nice clean grinding wheel and it's ready to grind our chisel. We're using beveled chisels here, so they have a small portion of bevel on either side and then this nice flat portion on the top. We need to ensure that this flat portion remains flat against the tool rest. We want to make sure that we're not rocking this chisel or lifting this chisel up. So we're gonna go ahead and do some grinding. I wanna make sure that you're keeping this nice and flat on that tool rest, and we're not angling side to side. We're gonna do nice smooth motions across that entire grinding wheel. After taking a couple passes, what you want to do is the tool starts to heat up. So we're going to end up dipping that in the water on the backside. If we allow the tool to heat up too much, we're going to lose that temper. You can see this if you're heating the tool up too much by any discoloration of that steel on the backside. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for nice even grinds all the way from the tip to the heel of that chisel. I'm also looking for it to be nice and square. So this is where I'm going to take my machinist square and I can check that for square. You should see some sparks coming over the back side, the flat part of that chisel. That tells us that we're grinding all the way to that tip. After that, make sure that you shut the machine off, allow it to coast down before you walk away from that machine. This is not the final process. The next stage is we'll get into honing.